It's the middle of the night. You're suddenly awake. The room is dark, the world is silent, and your mind starts its quiet panic. Why am I up? What's wrong with me? You lie there, frustrated, checking the time, certain your sleep is broken. But here's something almost no one tells you. That moment, waking in the deep of the night, may not be a malfunction at all. It may be your body remembering a way of sleeping humans followed for thousands of years, before we erased it. For most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night was not a problem. It was part of the plan. Picture the way you sleep now. One long block. You lie down, you fall unconscious, and ideally you do not surface again until the alarm. 8 hours, sealed shut in a single unbroken slab. That is what we are told sleep is supposed to be. And when it breaks, when you wake at 2 or 3 in the morning, you treat it like a failure. But this single block sleep is surprisingly new, and the evidence that we use to sleep differently is hiding in plain sight, scattered across old letters, diaries, court records, and books from centuries past. A historian went looking through these old documents and found something extraordinary. Over and over, in writing from hundreds of years ago, people referred to something called first sleep, and then, separately, second sleep. Not as a curiosity, as an ordinary part of life. Everyone knew what it meant. It was just how the night worked. Here is what it looked like. People would go to sleep not long after dark because there was not much else to do once the light was gone. They would sleep deeply for a few hours. This was the first sleep. Then, somewhere around midnight, they would naturally wake. Not in distress, not lying there anxious, just awake. And they would stay awake for an hour, sometimes 2, in the quiet middle of the night. Then they would drift back down into second sleep until dawn. So the question becomes irresistible. What did people do in that strange, wakeful hour in the dark? The answer is beautiful and a little haunting. They did all sorts of things. They prayed. They thought. They talked quietly with whoever was beside them. They got up and tended a fire, or visited a neighbor, or worked on something small. Couples used it as private time together. Some people used it to reflect on the dreams they had just had, while the dreams were still fresh. It was a calm, dim, unhurried pocket of time, a space that belonged to no one and nothing, in the deep silence when the rest of the world was still asleep. Some people even believed this was a uniquely clear-headed, peaceful state of mind. And here is the fascinating part. Modern science has seen something similar. Researchers took a group of modern people who normally slept the way most of us do now, in one solid block, and did something very simple. They took away artificial light. For weeks, these volunteers spent long stretches of each night in complete darkness, the way humans did before we lit up the world. And without anyone telling them to, their sleep began to change. It slowly split in 2. First, a stretch of deep sleep in the early night. Then, a quiet period of wakefulness in the middle. Then, a second sleep until morning. Their bodies, freed from the glow of modern life, drifted back toward the old 2-part pattern on their own. And during that wakeful gap in the middle of the night, something else happened. Their bodies produced higher levels of a hormone linked to calm and contentment, the kind of relaxed, drifting state you might feel in the warm minutes just before sleep. The people in the study did not describe that midnight hour as restless or anxious. They described it as peaceful, which means this is not just history. Some version of that old rhythm may still be wired into us, waiting under the surface, ready to return when the lights go out for long enough. Which means it might still be in you. That 2 a.m. waking you dread could be your biology reaching for a rhythm written into our species long before the modern world. So if this 2-part sleep was once normal, if our bodies may still reach for it, What happened? Why did almost everyone forget it ever existed? The answer is light. For nearly all of human history, when the sun went down, the world went dark, real dark. A candle or a fire pushed back the edges, but the night was long, and there was not much to do in it but sleep. So people slept early, woke in the middle, and slept again. The night had room for two sleeps because the night was enormous. Then we lit it up. First gas lamps, then the electric light bulb, and suddenly the night could be pushed back for hours. We could work later, read later, stay up later. The evening stretched, bedtime slid later and later, and the long, dark hours of the night shrank. There was no longer much room for two sleeps and a peaceful gap between them. There was only time to squeeze all our rest into one compressed block before the early alarm. And as the years passed, the memory of the old way faded. Those references to first sleep and second sleep simply vanished from people's writing. Within a few generations, humans had not only changed how they slept, they had forgotten they had ever slept any other way. We rebuilt the night, and we deleted a whole mode of human experience along with it. Think about what was actually lost. It was not just an hour of being awake. It was a recurring, built-in pause in the middle of every night, a quiet, candlelit space for reflection, for closeness, for thinking, for simply being still with your own mind in the dark. Our ancestors had that every night for free. We traded it for a brighter evening and a busier day. And it is worth noticing how slowly that trade happened. For thousands of years, light after sunset was precious and limited. A candle, an oil lamp, the dying embers of a fire. Light was something you rationed, so the night stayed long and dark, and there was simply nothing to do in most of it but sleep, wake, and sleep again. Then, little by little, we learned to push the darkness back. Gas lamps lit the streets of the cities. The wealthy could suddenly afford to keep their rooms glowing long after the sun was gone. And notice who changed first. The rich, the people with money to burn on light, were among the earliest to start compressing their sleep and stretching out their evenings, while poorer people still lived much closer to the old rhythm of the dark. Then came the electric bulb, and everything accelerated. Now anyone could turn night into day with the flick of a switch. Bedtime slid later. The long, empty darkness that had always held two sleeps and a peaceful gap between them simply shrank away. And what vanished with it was not only a sleep pattern, it was a kind of time. People had used that hour to pray, with prayers written specifically for the dead of night, to make love slow and unhurried in the warm dark, to rise and check on animals, to sit quietly by the fire, to slip next door and talk in low voices with a neighbor who was also awake, or simply to lie still and turn over the dreams they had just had while the dreams were still fresh. It was unhurried, unobserved time, a small private island of consciousness that belonged to no one and demanded nothing. And here is the cruel final twist. As the old pattern faded from memory, waking in the night did not disappear completely. It just lost its meaning. People still stirred at 2 a.m, the way humans always had. But now there was no name for it, no tradition to explain it. So the modern world gave it a new name, a problem. Insomnia. Something broken. Something to fix with worry, frustration, and sometimes pills. We took one of the most ordinary things a human body can do, stripped away the context that once made it peaceful, and turned it into a symptom. Now, an honest word here, because this matters. Not every night waking is some beautiful ancestral echo. Constant, exhausting insomnia is real, and if your sleep genuinely troubles you, that is a conversation for a doctor, not a video. But for a lot of people, that gentle waking in the deep night, the one that sends them spiraling into worry that something is wrong, may be nothing more than an old rhythm surfacing in a modern body. And the panic we feel about it might be doing more harm than the waking ever could. Because here is the quiet irony. Our ancestors woke in the night and felt peace. We wake in the night and feel fear. Same moment, same darkness, same body. The only thing that changed is that we were taught the waking is wrong. So we lie there fighting it when they simply let it be. Sit with the strange beauty of that. Buried inside you, underneath all the alarms and screens and schedules, there may be an older self, one that knew how to wake gently in the middle of the night and rest inside the silence instead of panicking against it. A self that treated the deep dark not as a problem to solve, but as a room to sit in. We did not just shorten our sleep. We may have erased one of the most peaceful hours a human being ever had. So the next time you find yourself awake at 2 in the morning, before you reach for your phone or your worry, try something our ancestors did every night without thinking. Just lie still in the dark. Let your mind wander. Let the silence be what it is. You are not broken. You might just be remembering.
Huh?